kids, welcome to Dixy Storytime World. Let's listen to Little Miss Sunshine and the Three Bears by Roger Hargreaves. Little Miss Sunshine went for a walk in the woods, and because it was a lovely hot day, she decided to go for a long walk. She walked and she walked and she walked. And then, suddenly, the weather turned for the worse. A storm arrived with a great crash and boom of thunder. She ran through the woods looking for shelter from the rain, which she found in the form of a cottage in a clearing in the woods. She knocked at the door. "Come in," said a very loud, gruff voice. The door led on to a kitchen, and sitting around the table were three bears: a big bear, a medium bear, and a little bear. On the table were three bowls of porridge: a big bowl, a medium bowl, and a little bowl. "We're just going out for a walk while our porridge cools down," said the middle bear. "You can stay here if you keep an eye on our porridge and make sure no one eats it." "Thank you, I will," agreed Little Miss Sunshine, and the three bears left. Bears do not mind the rain. Little Miss Sunshine settled down to wait, glad to be out of the storm. Suddenly the door burst open and Mr. Greedy barged his way in. "Mr. Greedy, what are you—" began Little Miss Sunshine. But before she could finish, Mr. Greedy spied the three bowls on the table. "Ooh, porridge!" he cried. "I'm starving." "You can't eat that porridge!" cried Little Miss Sunshine. But Mr. Greedy was hungry and he didn't listen. The first big bowl he tried was too hot. The next medium bowl was too cold. But the last small bowl was just right. So right that before Little Miss Sunshine knew it, Mr. Greedy had finished it all. Mr. Greedy looked at the small empty bowl. "Well, that wasn't nearly enough for me," he said. "I'm off to find a bigger meal." And he left as suddenly as he had arrived. Mr. Greedy had hardly been gone a minute when the door was flung open for a second time, and in stumbled Mr. Clumsy. "Hello, Mr. Clumsy," said Little Miss Sunshine. "What brings you here?" "Oh, my poor feet," he moaned. "I've been walking for miles. I need a rest." And he went into the living room where there were three chairs. "You can't come in here," cried Little Miss Sunshine. But Mr. Clumsy didn't listen, and he sat in the big chair. It was too lumpy. The medium chair was too soft, but the small chair was just right. So right that Mr. Clumsy leaned back, but being his usual clumsy self, he leaned back too far, and with a loud crack, the chair broke. Mr. Clumsy jumped up and said that he had just remembered something he had to do very urgently, and he left. Poor little Miss Sunshine! She looked miserably at the broken chair. What was she going to say to the three bears? It was then that Little Miss Sunshine heard a loud, gruff voice coming from the kitchen. "Who's been eating my porridge?" demanded the voice. "Who's been eating my porridge?" asked the medium voice. And then a tiny, squeaky voice said, "Who's been eating my porridge and eaten it all up?" Then the three bears came into the living room. "Who's been sitting in my chair?" said the big bear. "Who's been sitting in my chair?" said the medium bear. "And who's been sitting in my chair and broken it?" cried the little bear. The three bears glared angrily at Little Miss Sunshine. "Not me!" she cried. Just then the door flew open for a third time. It was Mr. Lazy. He yawned. "It's time for my nap. I need a bed." "You're not sleeping in my bed," boomed the big bear. "You're not sleeping in my bed," said the medium bear. "And you're not sleeping in my bed," squeaked the little bear. Mr. Lazy's face fell. "You can come and sleep at my house," said little Miss Sunshine. The bears were very happy to hear this, so Mr. Lazy and little Miss Sunshine said goodbye and set off back to her house. However, as you know, it was a very long walk, and Mr. Lazy kept having to stop for a quick 40 winks, so it was very late when they finally arrived. Late enough for it to be little Miss Sunshine's bedtime, too. In fact, it was everyone's bedtime. Big Bear was in his bed. Medium Bear was in his medium bed. Little Bear was in his little bed. Mr. Lazy was tucked up in little Miss Sunshine's bed, and little Miss Sunshine was on the sofa. Poor little Miss Sunshine. The end.